The stagecoach bucked to a final, jarring stop, and Li Mai gripped the edge of her wooden trunk, her knuckles white. Through the grime-streaked window, Redemption Gulch appeared not as the land of golden opportunity promised by the matchmaker, but as a handful of weary buildings clinging to a vast, indifferent earth. The air that seeped through the cracks was thin and sharp, carrying the alien scents of pine smoke and horse sweat, a world away from the familiar, humid embrace of Guangzhou's crowded streets. End of the line, the driver's voice rasped from above, a pronouncement that felt both like a release and a sentence. She was the last passenger. The others, boisterous American families and lone, hopeful men, had disembarked at larger, more civilized stops. She was a solitary island, a relic from a distant shore washed up on this strange and dusty coast. Li Mai took a slow, steadying breath, schooling her features into a mask of serene composure. She smoothed the dark, practical tunic that had survived an ocean voyage and a transcontinental railroad journey. In her trunk, wrapped in a swatch of red silk, lay a small jade pendant, her mother's last gift, and the marriage contract, its dual columns of Chinese characters and English script a testament to the desperate bargain she had made. The station platform was a treacherous landscape of rough-hewn planks that groaned under her thin-soled slippers. As she stepped down, the low murmur of conversation from a group of lounging men ceased. Every eye turned to her. It was not the simple curiosity she had seen directed at other newcomers. This was a stare of a different quality, pointed, dissecting, a mixture of fascination and suspicion. A Chinese bride. In Redemption Gulch, she was an exotic specimen, a creature from a storybook to be gaped at. Li Mai kept her chin high, her spine straight. A lifetime of discipline, of learning to present an unruffled surface to the world, was her only armor now. "You're Miss Li?" The voice was deep, calm, and startlingly close. It held the steady, unhurried cadence of the land itself. She turned to face a man who seemed less built upon the earth than sprung directly from it. He was tall, with shoulders as broad as an axe handle, encased in a simple shirt and a worn leather vest. His hands, hanging relaxed at his sides, were large and mapped with the calluses of hard labor. His face was a landscape of its own, weathered by sun and wind, with fine lines crinkling the corners of startlingly blue eyes. Those eyes held a direct, assessing gaze, but there was no malice in them, only a quiet practicality. He stood apart from the other men, a silent rebuke to their open gawking. "I am Li Mai," she replied, her voice softer than she intended, but her English, practiced for months, was careful and precise. "Logan Stone," he said, his mouth tipping into a slight, welcoming smile that eased the sternness of his features. "Folks around here just call me Stone." His gaze took in her small trunk and the single cloth-wrapped bundle she carried. "Is this all?" "It is everything," she said simply, and it was the truth. The journey had cost her family every spare coin, every last hope. He nodded once, as if he understood the weight of her words. He lifted the trunk with an ease that belied its solid weight. "My wagon's this way. It's a ways to the homestead. Best get started before the sun gets low." The ride was silent at first, a quiet cocoon moving through a world of overwhelming scale. The ramshackle town vanished in the dust behind them, replaced by an endless, rolling ocean of lodgepole pines and mountains that clawed at the sky, their peaks already dusted with an early hint of snow. The sheer emptiness of it all was terrifying. In Guangzhou, one was never truly alone, surrounded always by the press and pulse of humanity. Here, the silence was a living thing, vast and powerful. Logan handled the reins with an easy, rhythmic competence, his movements economical and sure. He was a man at home in this intimidating wildness. "Winter comes on fast here," he said finally, his voice a comfortable rumble against the clop of the horse's hooves. "Would need splitting. The root cellar isn't full. There's always work." "I am not afraid of work, Mr. Stone," she stated. It was a core tenet of her upbringing. Work was honorable, idleness was a disgrace. He glanced at her then, and she saw a flicker of genuine approval in his blue eyes. Good. He fell silent again, but the quiet had changed. It felt less like a void and more like a shared space. She had imagined this moment, this man, 1,000 times. The pamphlets from the matchmaking agency had spoken of opportunity, of partnership. Her family had spoken of duty, of securing a future she could not have at home. She had prepared herself for a hard man, a demanding master. This quiet, respectful stranger was a puzzle. "There is something," she began, forcing the difficult words out. "From my letters. A matter of great importance. I must be sure you understood." Logan's hands remained steady on the reins. He didn't turn to look at her, but she felt the focus of his attention shift entirely to her. "I read what you wrote. About the physicians you saw in San Francisco." A flush of heat, sharp and shameful, crept up her neck. The examination had been a humiliation, a cold, clinical pronouncement delivered by a man who saw her as a biological specimen. "The womb is tilted," he had said, his words devoid of compassion. "An abnormality. Childbearing will be difficult, if not impossible." In her culture, it was a death sentence to a woman's value. "Then why," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the creak of the wagon, "did you choose me?" He was quiet for a long moment, guiding the horses around a deep rut in the track. "Doctors see what's in front of Slem," he said at last, his tone thoughtful. "They see flesh and bone. They don't see spirit. They don't know what makes a family." The wagon rolled on, and the rhythm of its movement was a steadying counterpoint to the frantic beating of her heart. "My advertisement was clear," she pressed, needing to understand. "You want sons to carry your name." "I want a home," he corrected gently, and now he did turn to look at her, his gaze direct and unwavering. "I want to build something that lasts. Something to pass on. My father and his father built their lives on this continent. Fought for it. Bled for it. I aim to do the same." He gestured with his chin towards the horizon. "That's what I'm building out here." And then she saw it. Nestled in a meadow, backed by a dark wall of forest, sat a cabin. It was not large or grand, but it radiated a sense of solid, unpretentious strength. A curl of smoke rose from its stone chimney, a fragile plume of life in the vast wilderness. "Took me 3 years to build that right," he said, a quiet pride in his voice. He pulled the wagon to a stop before the small porch. He climbed down, then turned and reached up for her. His hands were warm and rough, his grip careful, as if he were handling something precious. "We'll ride to the justice of the peace tomorrow," he said. "Make it legal." The cabin, on the inside, was a reflection of the man who built it, sparse, functional, but immaculately clean. A large main room served as kitchen, dining, and living space, dominated by a great stone fireplace that promised warmth against the coming cold. A sturdy table and 2 chairs stood in the center. She saw 2 doors. One led to a bedroom with a proper bed, covered with a thick quilt. The other led to a smaller, windowless room containing a simple rope-strung cot. "You take the bedroom," he said, placing her trunk at the foot of the bed. His gaze didn't quite meet hers. "I'll stay in the small room. Until you're ready." Lee-Mai could only nod, a lump forming in her throat. The gesture was one of such profound respect it left her speechless. She had been prepared for demands, for her wifely duty to begin immediately. She had steeled herself for it. This quiet consideration was a gift she hadn't known how to ask for. Over a simple supper of rabbit stew and coarse bread, they began to bridge the chasm between their 2 worlds. It was an awkward, halting conversation, but it was a beginning. She told him of the rice paddies of her home province, he told her of the brutal winters and glorious, fleeting summers of Montana. About the children, Lee-Mai began again, needing to settle the matter that lay like a stone in her heart. "I cannot promise." Logan set down his spoon and leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I'm not asking for a promise your body can't keep," he said, his voice firm but kind. "My people have been on this land for generations. My grandfather fought to tame it. My father died defending it. All I have is their name and this ground." He paused, choosing his words with the same care he might use to set a fence post. "I'm asking if you will try with me. Will you stand beside me, work with me, and help me build a future here? Raise sons, God willing, to carry my name and know the honor in that? It's not your womb I'm asking about, Lee-Mai." It's your heart. Not can you, but will you? The question was not a demand for an heir, it was a plea for a partner. He was asking for her will, her spirit, her effort, things she could control. Limai thought of the years of shame she had anticipated, the fear of being a barren wife, a disgrace to her ancestors and a disappointment to her husband. Then she looked at this man, with his clear, honest eyes, who built things to last and spoke of family legacy not in terms of biological certainty, but of shared heart and unwavering will. A single, hot tear traced a path through the dust on her cheek. Yes, she said, her voice clear and strong. I will. He nodded once, a deep satisfaction settling in his eyes. The matter was closed. Then we'll face whatever comes, together. Their wedding was a simple, quiet affair before a stern-faced justice of the peace. The witnesses were the storekeeper, Tom Pike, and his wife, Martha, who pressed a jar of spiced apple butter into Limai's hands with a warm, shy smile. Back at the cabin, they fell into the rhythm of a shared life. The days were long and filled with labor. Logan taught her how to handle an axe, showing her how to use her body's weight, not just her arm strength. He taught her to shoot a rifle, his hands patient and steady as he positioned her arms, the terrifying kick of the weapon a necessary evil in this untamed land. In return, she brought her own world into his. She showed him how to stretch their flour supply by adding potato, a trick her mother had used in lean times. She established a small herb garden in boxes by the window, her quiet singing as she tended the plants a new and gentle sound in the silent valley. One evening, she attempted to make kanji, the comforting rice porridge of her childhood, but the coarse cornmeal he had was a poor substitute. The resulting gritty gruel was nearly inedible, but when Logan took a second spoonful with a grimly determined expression, she couldn't help but laugh. It was the first time he had heard her laugh, a bright, clear sound that made his own lips curve into a genuine smile. A bridge had been built in that moment, forged of shared failure and good humor. In the evenings, a comfortable ritual formed. She would work on her mending, her fingers nimble, while he sat across the table, carving small, intricate figures from scraps of wood, a bird, a horse, a flower. They didn't speak much, but the silence was now full of a shared understanding. One rainy afternoon, she went to the barn loft, searching for old sacks to protect her herbs from the first frost. Tucked away under the eaves, she found a wooden box. Her curiosity overriding her sense of propriety, she opened it. Inside, layered in oilcloth, were a stack of letters and several sheets of paper covered in pencil sketches. They were drawings of a cradle, exquisitely detailed, the headboard designed with an intricate carving of wildflowers. With them were letters, written in a looping, feminine hand, filled with talk of parties and new dresses, but strangely empty of warmth or affection. That was a long time ago. Logan's voice from the top of the ladder startled her. He climbed the rest of the way and sat beside her in the hay, the scent of rain and damp earth clinging to him. He looked at the box in her lap. Her name was Sarah. She promised to wait while I was away on a long cattle drive down to Texas. I sent my pay back for 2 years. His voice was flat, devoid of self-pity. I came back to find her married to a banker from the city. She said she couldn't abide the uncertainty of a cowboy's life. He picked up one of the sketches. I was young. Thought if I built the perfect cradle, it would somehow guarantee the family to put in it. He looked at her, his expression somber. I started to build it when I first settled this land. The wood is still out back, under a torp. But I couldn't finish it. It's hard to build a cradle for a child you might never have. The shared vulnerability of the moment emboldened her. What if the doctors are right, Logan, she whispered, the name feeling natural on her tongue now. What if you have bound yourself to a woman who will bring your family name to an end? What if I am broken? He turned to her fully, taking the box and setting it aside. He took her hands in his. You think that's what this is about? A broodmouth. The crude word made her flinch, but his grip was gentle. Limai, I see the woman who works from sunup to sundown without complaint. Who faces down the stairs in town with more dignity than any of those fancy ladies from the stories. Who has brought a quiet beauty into this rough place. He gently touched her cheek. You are not broken, You are the strongest person I have ever known. You are more than enough, just as you are." That night, she came to him not out of duty, but out of choice, out of a deep and burgeoning affection for this good, honorable man. In the quiet darkness of their shared bed, with the rain pattering a soft rhythm on the roof, they began to build a marriage that was more than a contract, a partnership that was becoming a profound love. Months later, a fragile, terrifying hope began to bloom in her heart. Her monthly courses ceased. But then, one cold morning, the hope was washed away in a wave of blood and cramping. The grief was a sharp, physical pain. She hid it, ashamed of her body's failure, but Logan knew. He saw the shadows under her eyes, the forced brightness of her smile. That night, he simply held her as she wept, his silent strength a comfort beyond words. "It's all right," he murmured against her hair. "We'll try again. Or, we'll find another way. There are children in the mining towns, orphans, left with no 1 inch. You would raise a child not of your blood," she asked, her voice muffled against his chest. "I would raise a child of our hearts," he answered without hesitation. The threat, when it came, was not from within their home, but from the outside world. A land speculator from back east, a man named Bartholomew Thorne with a predator's smile and cold, calculating eyes, arrived in Redemption Gulch. He rode out to their homestead one afternoon, pretending to be interested in buying adjacent land. His gaze lingered on Limai with a mixture of contempt and oily curiosity, as if she were just another one of Stone's possessions. A week later, the true purpose of his visit became clear. The marshal, his face grim, rode up with 2 deputies and Thorne in tow. He served Logan with papers. A challenge to his homestead claim. A dusty, forgotten regulation stated that a claimant could not leave their land for more than a 6-month period. Years ago, Logan had been deputized by that same marshal and had spent the better part of a season chasing a vicious band of rustlers across the territory. He was serving the community. Tom Pike, the storekeeper, argued furiously at the hearing. But he didn't file the proper temporary absence paperwork. Thorne's lawyer, a slick man from the city, countered smoothly. "An unfortunate oversight, but the law is the law." The courtroom was packed with their neighbors, a silent, grim-faced wall of support for Logan and Limai. Thorne had brought in 3 hired witnesses, rough men who swore they'd passed through the valley that season and found the property abandoned. It seemed that legal trickery and cold cash would triumph over honest work and community service. Limai sat beside Logan, her hands clenched in her lap, her heart a cold stone of dread. But the people of Redemption Gulch were not so easily beaten. One by one, they stood to testify for Logan about his character, his generosity, his unwavering honesty. It was a powerful display of community, but the lawyer relentlessly hammered on the single point of law. Just as the judge was preparing to make his ruling, the courtroom doors swung open. A deputy U.S. Marshal, trail dusty and hard-eyed, strode in. "Apologies for the interruption, Your Honor," he boomed. "I have warrants for these 3 men," he pointed to Thorne's witnesses. "They're part of a fraud ring, professional perjurers wanted in 3 territories. And their employer," his gaze fell on Thorne, "is wanted for similar land fraud schemes in Colorado." The courtroom erupted. Justice, swift and satisfying, had arrived. As a stunned Thorne was led away in chains, he shot a venomous glare at them. "You've won nothing but a barren wife and a pile of dirt," he spat. Outside, in the clean, bright sunshine, Logan pulled Limai into his arms, holding her tight as their neighbors clapped him on the back. "He's wrong," Logan said, his voice thick with emotion as he looked at her. "We have a home." 2 years later, that home was no longer quiet. The sound of a child's laughter echoed off the log walls. Annamai, a perfect fusion of 2 worlds with her father's startling blue eyes and her mother's silken black hair, was their miracle. Against all odds, Limai's body had healed and quickened in the safety and love of her new life. Now, another child grew beneath her apron. Logan was adding a new room to the cabin, not out of hope, but out of certainty. The cradle, finally finished by their shared hands, sat by the fire, the carved wildflowers a testament to a dream redeemed. The life they had built was rich and full, woven into the fabric of the community that had embraced them. One evening, they sat on the porch, watching the sky bleed purple and gold over the mountains. Anna Mai slept soundly inside in the beautiful cradle. Logan's hand rested on Li Mai's belly, where their son, who they would name Samuel, after Logan's father, stirred. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked softly. "Your home across the sea?" Li Mai thought for a moment, her gaze on the distant peaks. "I miss my mother's garden. I miss the taste of lychee fresh from the tree," she admitted. "But my home is here." She turned to look at the man beside her, the love she felt for him a warm, steady flame in her heart. "Here, I have a life I help build. A husband who values my heart, not just my body. A daughter who will know the stories of her ancestors from the great mountains of Montana and from the green hills of Guangzhou." He kissed her then, a long, sweet kiss that tasted of promises kept and a future secured. The wind whispered through the pines, a timeless song carrying their story out across the valley. They were living proof that family was not about the purity of blood or the adherence to old traditions, but about two people from different worlds brave enough to build something new, together. Their love, born from a simple contract, had put down roots in the hard mountain soil and blossomed into something more beautiful than either of them could have ever dreamed.